and cold water comes in and goes straight into the bottom of the cold water tank and fills from the bottom of the tank. Cold water at the bottom because heat rises and the hot water comes out from the top. This is the outlet, and this feed here goes to this. Now this device was installed recently because by law you've got to have an intermixer which brings your water temperature down to 55 degrees. It's in an effort to stop the large number of scalding and burnings that happen, especially young children in households. This pipe here, cold water in, goes to the tank, and this feed comes out and it goes in this other side of the intermixer. So that's the cold water going into the intermixer. This is the hot water here going into the intermixer, and then that black one there goes into the house and feeds them. If your one-way valve has sediment in it, it tends to indicate your tank will need cleaning. This is a typical 300 litre Solahart solar hot water heater. On the one side of it you'll find a cover held in by one screw. Once you take the cover off, you'll see the sacrificial rod, the thermostat and the heating element access. Step 1 is to loosen the sacrificial rod. It will be very tight and very hard to undo, and to do it I purchased from Supercheap a 36mm socket and had to use a very long torsion bar to loosen it. This must be done while the water tank is still full of the 300 litres of water. Once your sacrificial rod is loosened, you then use your spanner to undo and take off the freshwater inlet, and that will let you drain your water tank. Once empty, first step is to undo the 4 bolts holding in the heating element. As it's been about 10 years since my heater has been serviced, this is an example of how much calcium is in the water where I live, and this explains why the electric element was no longer effective at heating the water. It is so covered and caked in calcium that it no longer was able to put heat back into the water. While I did consider cleaning it with vinegar or calcium remover, it was made more sense to put a whole brand new one in at a cost of $35, as I'm already going to all the trouble of cleaning and emptying my water tank and putting in a new sacrificial rod. Next was removing the 6 bolts holding the large inspection plate, and I got to have my first look at the inside of my hot water tank. You can see all the calcium lying on the bottom of the tank, and the white bits, I believe, are meant to be a plastic holder that holds the end of the rod up that has just deteriorated and fallen apart over time. Next was removing the sacrificial anode, which thankfully had been loosened previously when the water tank was still full of its 300 litres of water. Otherwise there's no way you'd undo it without damaging all your fittings. Here you can see the old and the new anode and how much corrosion has happened with the old one, which, considering how old it is not too bad. Next I took the cover plate and the O-ring back down and put them in a bath of vinegar to dissolve the calcium. This is what it looks like after a couple of hours of soaking and just using a wire brush to remove the worst of the calcium. Thankfully I was able to reuse both those parts, including the O-ring, which saved me $100 a kit that I otherwise would have had to purchase. Next, grabbing my wet and dry vacuum cleaner, I use it to clean and suck up the remaining of the water and all the sediment at the bottom, but there were some large bits that needed to be picked up by hand as they were too big for the vacuum cleaner. After I hosed out the tank and then re-vacuumed it, this is the result at the end. Next, it was time to put back in the sacrificial rod. It is very important not to put any plumber's tape on this, as it needs to have a firm electrical connection to the body of the water tank. This next part is quite tricky. When it's time to put the new sacrificial rod back into the water tank, you'll find you'll need to put your arm in through the inspection plate as far as you can, lifting up the rod and supporting it as well as you can, and trying to get the thread to start. I found this quite difficult, and it took me a good 10 minutes till finally I was able to get the thread started. Next, it was time to put the clean plate and O-ring back in, having made sure that all of the ring there is clean and debris free. It is important to do the bolts up in a crossover pattern so the O-ring settles in properly. Because I've been taking photos and videos throughout this project, I was able to see which way round I had to put the heating element back in. This is where you need a licensed electrician to help you wire up your fittings. So you can see that's the feed to your element, and that's your thermostat up there, and you've got one screw fitting just here and the other one up here. This is where I put that fitting back in and to open that. This is the water inlet, and just use this spanner to tighten it up firmly and snugly. I've now got everything connected up except for the outlet over here, but when I start turning on the cold water feed, which is the tap for it's downstairs, the tank will start to fill up. And like all pressurized water vessels, water goes in, air's got to come out. So I'm going to leave this disconnected. The reason I'm going to do that is A, it will flush any last sediment that might be inside that pipe I haven't managed to get out before it goes into the intermixer. And the other thing is, it lets me know that the water level's got to this level. Once it gets to this level, the good thing with that is I know it's covering the element. Now, because it's an overcast day today, I'm going to have to use the element to heat my tank, even with take my covers off, because I like to have a hot shower tonight. So the tank's gone quiet now while I'm waiting for it to fill. Once it's filled, I can put it over there. I might just put a little cover over this so none of the gunge gets into this filter here. There's a very fine filter in here that needs to be blown out. Well, first thing you check when you're having problems. Now, one of the reasons I need to keep this cover off, and of course the power is still turned off, need to keep the cover off is I need to check any forms of leaks coming from the three main points, which is going to be that one, the big ring, and this one. So I need to keep an eye on that, but I won't really know that for sure until I get up to pressure. So hot water creates a lot of pressure, and that's when it puts stress on these seals. So I will need to put the cover on when I turn on the electricity, but I'll need to come back and check it regularly to make sure I haven't got any leaks. Right, so that indicates to me the tank's now full. Now, unfortunately, I've got no way of turning the water off from up here on the roof, so I've just got to get myself wet and do up the fitting. Okay, well, I'm all wet, but I've got the fitting done up. So now I'll keep the cover off for a while and just check there's not any leaks. Let's just turn this valve. So it's flushing water through where my relief valve goes, but that's sounding good. Stop it and start it a few times. Make sure it's behaving. Alright. So, all finished. I'll now take the tarp off and let the sun do its work. While I'm here, I might as well clean off the roof. Clean the solar collectors. While it was a big project to do, especially as there was such a limited amount of information available, you can see by the costs I was managing to save quite a lot of money in terms of labour, having a professional plumber come in, plus I can do this in the future. Thank you for watching.